Good evening.
Hello, all.
Hello.
Hello. That's going to end up being our thing. Welcome, Monday night live stream, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Pedro.
So what's going on? We have a busy night.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. Obviously, this has been a big weekend for Florida politics, potentially. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening. But for those of you who may or may not know, we're going to wait for everybody to get on. John, as good as always. Ethan, welcome. Everybody, hit the like button. Make sure you're watching on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Make a comment. Share it.
It's free.
Do it all.
It's free. That's the thing.
Doesn't cost you anything.
It doesn't cost you anything. You just subscribe on YouTube. It's
but
free.
If you're feeling like you want to spend a little bit of money, look how awesome our shirts
Well,
are.
there's that. But if you want to support,
yes,
you can be a Patreon. And that's always helpful. We have $1, $5, $10 a month options. This month we are having our very first members only Zoom call. So it's a bonus just for members. This is for people at $5 and $10. And it's going to be on Wednesday evening. The amazing Mona Lisa Weber of Probation Station will be giving a presentation on food insecurity and the link between that and the school to prison pipeline. And she's just Mo. She's awesome. So yes, that's on Wednesday. And so that's only going to be for Patreons. And so you guys can be part of the Zoom meeting. You'll be able to ask questions and we're going to do them every month. And you know, I'll try to find decent presentations, but it's just generally the idea that you guys can come into a meeting, tell us, you know, talk, ask us questions, give suggestions, that kind of thing about, the show. And then, yeah, it's bonus content for subscribers.
Yippee,
I'm giving an incentive. Also, if you are a $5 a month subscriber, you get a Generational Change hemp Etsy small business made bracelet in special. No, because I just sent out my last one. So I need to order more. But local, not local here, but a small artisan on Etsy.
Scooch over a little bit in that direction. Perfect.
No, then I'm covering Thurgood.
Oh,
I can't. No, because Thurgood has to be over my shoulder. So you get a bracelet.
That's Mike Gellen's name back.
Yes, it is. Well, no, that always requires me to turn like this. So if you're a $5 Patreon, you will get a cool purple and orange custom bracelet from us, and a $10 Patreon gets you Here Comes the Sun Generational Change jersey, and that's that. So if you want to be a supporter by Wednesday, get to come on our special Zoom.
Yeah, it is a pretty special Zoom.
Obviously,
we're trying to turn this thing into something bigger. Obviously, we're trying to make it as local as we can. But obviously, we also want to be expansive and not just limited. So that's why Monday nights are specifically focusing on Florida.
We talk about other things. And here's the other thing, though. It also is guest dependent because last Monday we had Marianne Williamson.
That's true.
So
we make exceptions for.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, okay, Florida and labor issues we tend to deal with on Mondays.
Yes.
But it's guest dependent.
It is.
We try to do it that way. We try. So what is going on in Florida?
Well, we have a lot going on in Florida. And right now, I would say as important as any story that we could focus on, because Mike is going to be coming into the studio.
Let me guess.
In a few minutes.
The cleavage story.
The cleavage story is one that's kind of silly. That's a Florida kind of story.
It is.
Because there's really not much you can really address here. But for those,
this is what happens when I'm the person who does the graphics. This is this is what happens. And I never tell him. And I always like to put something on there.
Well, a conservative but welcomed friend of the show, Ron Martin, wanted to point out that Governor Ron DeSantis did sign a bill allowing people to sue big tech firms for biased censorship and the state to fine companies $250,000. Now, all I can tell you is that from a PR standpoint, this is going to help Ron DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis has started his official presidential campaign.
He sure has.
So that's what we're looking at. But no, I mean, I actually agreed with this as well. And I, again, not a fan.
Shame on the Democrats for allowing this guy to walk right into it, because it was a wide open lane to make this possible.
So what? All right. So seriously, we have a few minutes, and then we're going to bring on our first guest. So what do we want to?
If you want to, just because there's really not much to elaborate on the, as far as the high school yearbook photo goes.
I just find it so amusing, because really, this is what Florida is apparently getting recognized for, because so this is an NPR piece. So I just always find it funny how we're portrayed on national sources and the kind of things that they find about Florida. There's no shortage of weirdness here, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
But this to me is we're having censorship that I've been noticing a lot increasing lately. We had it a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the book that was banned from Coral Springs in Broward County schools because school board member Lori Aldahoff, is that her name, felt that the material was inappropriate, which is interestingly in line with the police union. And yet Common Sense Media finds it completely appropriate. What do you know? So anyway, we're having a lot of censorship lately. So when I see things like this.
And this is just a story that kind of speaks to what's been going on lately. Remember the story very recently about the 6-year-old girl who was getting paddled by her principal?
And now that has since turned out to sort of be some sort of scam situation that was going on. Like the school's mother was kind of setting it up. I mean, the kid's mother, there was a weird follow-up to that. Don't quote me, but something was not typical about that. But yeah, we're having a serious problem. So this yearbook was giving parents refunds because of the fact that they had altered the photos. Now, I don't know if anybody can see the difference between photo 1 and photo 2. There is a slight touch of cleavage in picture on the left, which, that girl is a hussy that you would never bring home to your mother. But then here we go on the right, and you can see that little bit of cleavage is gone, and now she's good. So you know what?
Puritanism is dead, people.
You know what? Honestly, if she were wearing something really hoochie mama or something, and she had real okay, maybe I would get it, but that's ridiculous. So anyway, this is what we are now debating here.
But this is a Florida story.
It really is.
On a positive Florida story, which does happen. We are seeing a resurgence in the Florida Panther.
I know.
Which is obviously a good thing.
I was very pleased about this.
The official mascot of the state of Florida.
Official state mammal.
But official state mammal, even though you were in favor of the manatee.
I am old, and I am a second-generation Floridian. So I actually remember when we had the statewide vote regarding the state mammal. And I remember, and I voted. I don't know if it was just I don't think it was just school people, but we did this thing in the school where we were able to vote through schools. And I voted for manatee, which, and no offense to the panther. Panthers are awesome. I don't have, problem with the panther, but panthers exist in a lot of places. And I kind of feel like manatees are so special. However, we were down to approximately 20 Florida Panthers, really on the verge of not having that species here anymore. And now I believe the number we're well over 200 and something. I mean, they're well up in.
That's great.
Yeah. I
can remember being young when we had a shortage of American bald eagles, and that was a big deal.
Yeah. So we are seeing.
You can preserve a species. Obviously, this is very important to our state.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a great story.
I was hoping when we went kayaking the other day that we would see one, but they're not over there.
No. Well, they probably were. You just couldn't see them.
No, they're not. They're not. No, I don't think so. But they are where I was in Sanibel with Reese. They do actually show up there, and people do see them.
We've got funny people that like to show up on our podcast. So anytime that happens, we're always going to.
Mermaids. If you go to Weeki Springs in Florida, they have the mermaid show. It's famous.
We are going to save the story about the HCA Healthcare setting up $50 million, but we do listen. We have a lot of issues with our president, but
we'll talk Haiti and healthcare when we come back.
We will obviously give credit where credit is due. President Biden did extend TPS.
Yes.
So that is
so for people who don't understand, that's temporary protective status.
Yes.
And what this does is it basically saves a huge amount of the Haitian community. It's probably other people too, but I think they're very, very impacted by this. But people that live on constant stress and living in fear of being deported, a lot of those people just had a huge weight lifted off of their shoulders. He extended it 18 months. And so for that, we give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely. And of course, Marie Woodson, who is state representative.
Friend of the show, Marie Woodson. And so
very, very happy.
I had to point her out because, we love Marie here.
So speaking of local elected representatives who are actually serving the community, such a rare thing these days, wouldn't you say?
It's such an anomaly.
But we happen to be very fortunate that there
on
is a local elected representative in Broward County, mind you, that is
interestingly not in our district.
No, and in North Broward, where there's just as myriad issues as there are in South Broward. But he is definitely a trailblazer in his own right. He's going to have a lot to share with us, and very much looking forward to now bringing into the studio none other than Tamarack Commissioner Mike Gellen. Mike, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Good evening to both of you.
Absolutely.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. You guys have a great show, great chemistry, and I'm enjoying it.
Oh,
Awesome.
good.
See, that's why they want to come in early. They want to make sure
They want to just watch. So we've never met. I mean, I hate to say, but I'm pretty exclusive about district. And when I mean I say that jokingly, but when you have only so many hours to campaign and time in a day, I really only prioritize people and municipalities.
So
in
anything
district.
that's north of Sunrise is
basically I haven't had it.
little vague for our understanding. And so
it's not that I'm districtist. I'm open to other districts, but I really just didn't focus. So why don't you, how long have you been commissioner there? Why don't you pretend we've never met, because we've never met. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, before I do that, why don't I tell you how I met you? I saw your name on the ballot, and I said, who is this bold woman that's challenging the status quo? So, of course, I did my research, very impressed with your background, and I was like, wow, she's actually challenging the status quo, doing what everyone is saying, don't waste your time doing, and doing a great job at it. So I have a lot of respect for you. I'm really impressed with what you're doing on a regular basis, staying engaged with the community, not disappearing. So I'm very impressed with that. Happy to meet with you and happy to be on the show.
Thank you. That's so nice. And you know what? Where were you a year and a half ago? I could have really used some municipal love when we were getting blackballed and ghosted from everybody.
I think Mike would be the first to tell you that you kind of have to go through it at least one time and get your butt kicked and just kind of learn.
And I don't feel like that. I don't
here.
feel like that. But certainly there are not a lot of elected people that are willing to put their necks out, even though they would prefer a change. And even though they recognize a need, they're too scared to step out and do that. And you're not. So can you talk a little bit? Because obviously you see the same thing. You see it from the inside. You've got a lot of elected people. And maybe they went in with good intentions, but they're not rocking the boat. They're they're not rocking the boat. What do you see in terms of that?
I see people that are afraid of making change because a few people will get upset and make some noise, and they respond to the few people instead of the everyday people that want to see change, but they're so busy living their lives that they're not rocking the boat the same way that the few people who are making the change are. And little things. So for example, a lot of cities, Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, a lot of other cities have banned the use of plastic straws, single-use plastics. We can't ban styrofoams because of Tallahassee. So last year I said, hey, let's ban plastic straws in Tamarack. And the commission voted no. They don't believe business owners can afford the 2 extra cents to use paper straws. So I have that back on the agenda again on this coming Wednesday night. And hopefully, it'll pass this time around. We know the impact that it has on the environment. I introduced the idea of, adding a track to our local sports complex. And there's a few people making noise about it. And now the commission is scared. And it's like, don't be scared because a few people on Facebook make some noise. Get a real assessment of how the community really feels and then make a bold decision. But as you know, people get in positions of power and then they're afraid to lose their seat. And so serving the community takes less priority than keeping a seat for themselves because of the benefits and the perks and the extra dollars that they make. So it's really sad. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
Yeah, the thing that I think can be fairly said is that there were a lot of people that we did meet on the campaign trail that were very much public of their support of our current representative, but there were also a lot of them that in private would say something completely different. Yeah. And that is just speaking to the entrenchment that this county has.
I could give a list of people that publicly seem to like our representative, but I could tell you, I assure you they do not. Yeah. And you would never know, and I would never say anything, but it's just pathetic to me that people feel that our governance is something that is to be feared, and that representatives and there's repercussions from our governance that is to be feared. And I find that sad. And it isn't so much that I think that they're cowardly. I mean, they are in a way, but I just completely disagree with their entire perception of the paradigm, because to me, our representatives are our employees,
Right.
and they're insubordinate.
Correct.
We tolerate a lot from them, but it's like, why is this that people tolerate it and live in fear of them is beyond me.
It is. And then there's also the belief that once someone holds a seat for 2, 3, or 4 terms, there's a perception that they own that seat now, and you're being disrespectful by even challenging them.
Yep.
Instead of embracing the fact that this is a democracy and we need new ideas and new people and new faces, and we should embrace the fact that someone's challenging a long-term incumbent. But it seems like that's not really embraced, especially.
No, and I assure you that the word democracy is not correlated with democratic,
right,
in terms of the party, because they pretended my race didn't exist. They ghosted us. Like, you would have never even known. We really got ghosted. So
and the media plays a role in that.
Oh yeah,
they intentionally, and they knew how capable and how qualified you were, and they knew that if people knew that, it could have an impact on the election. So they absolutely ghosted you.
Yeah.
When they did the, I would say there were a couple of instances over the course of the campaign that really stood out. One of them, of course, was a screening interview that was not announced publicly. It was the only real official debate, if you want to call it that, between Jen and Debbie. And when it happened, they kept it very quiet.
That was not a debate.
It was whatever you would call.
It was the Sun Sentinel.
Basically rolling out the red carpet for
it was the Sun Sentinel interviews with the board, for the endorsement board, which I knew was ridiculous, and I told you was ridiculous.
And again, we're not going to call out anybody specifically, but I will say that one of the people who did the interview, if you had not known who that person was, you would think that they were a personal friend of the representative.
No. Why do you say, if you didn't, you would think that they are friends?
But there's supposed to be a level of professionalism that is supposed to exist.
Can I please tell you,
do not want it to exist.
Old rich white people on the board, old rich white people in charge, and they're all friends. So that's what it was.
That does matter.
Sorry, but it's true.
And
have you seen the editorial board of the Sun Sentinel?
I have. Okay. They've been hammering Tamarack. So as we've gotten more diverse, we've been an attack target for them. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Old habits die hard.
The truth is they're really a substandard publication. It's interesting from a journalistic perspective. Now, I am someone who went to school for journalism, both undergrad and graduate school, mind you. So this is something that I do, I was trained in. Okay. Right. And so there was a point when I moved back to town here that I got a copy of the Sun Sentinel, and I sat there with a red pen and I went through like an editor and I edited it. I was so tempted to send it back to them and say, you are a swill rag. And this was not political in any mind, just the quality of the paper. Yeah. Now, politically, I also find them ridiculous.
Well, it's no different than, obviously everybody identifies with corporate media, particularly CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News as being, the corporate standard in terms of where people, unfortunately, especially, we obviously have a very older demographic in Broward that tend to get their news from there.
Yes.
But print news is still a big thing. And for very subsections of the country, Broward happens to be one of those areas.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a lot of, Northeastern transplants in particular. My grandfather, God bless him, he's 93. He's still going. He still gets the New York Post, and obviously a lot of people will read the Sun Sentinel. Now,
they read it online. Though,
and in terms of publication, it's 150,000 subscribers. Now, to the layperson, that may sound like a lot. In the grand scheme of things, in terms of how many people actually read newspapers, it's probably not that big. But in terms of its impact on local elections, it still is pretty significant in many respects. Now, there are races where it does have an impact, races where it doesn't have an impact. So I think an important question to ask, Mike, would be, when you did run for office, we have a philosophy in terms of where are the most important places that you really need to get a base of support from. Jen is under the guise that the best place to really target is to go through labor. Would you subscribe to that? And do you feel that that's one or potentially multiple places?
You make it sound like I'm all or nothing on labor.
I didn't say that, but you said it's at the top.
It is. I do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think labor is certainly one of the areas that you need to focus on. Demonstrating support for the unions, getting their support, being on their endorsement cards, that's a huge deal. In the race that you were in, that's going to be tough, a tough sell, because again, people don't want to rock the boat.
We got one to cross. We got one AFL-CIO local to cross, Dan Reynolds. We got we got the iron workers to cross and endorse. So we figured that the magic number is 3.
Yes.
We need 3 unions that are willing to step aside of Dan Reynolds. Now, Dan Reynolds is the problem.
And even though he didn't endorse us, the person that I absolutely have to tip my hat to, who is just an amazing independent-minded thinker who unfortunately had his hands tied, is Jason Smith, the head of the firefighters union. He really has the right idea.
I love firefighters.
Well, there you go. And we saw your post recently. That was, you know what? But before we continue, what was that experience like working with the local firefighters? I mean, that must have been a trip and a half.
It was. And so in 2014, I ran for mayor, and I didn't get the endorsement of police or fire. Lost that election. In 2018, I ran for the district.
Oh, screen freeze.
Firefighters endorsed my opponent. But when we were out there campaigning, we were talking, getting along. And even though my opponent was on their card, they were telling the voters to vote for me. And so, recently I did maybe 2-hour drill with the firefighters, Tamarack Fire and Broward Sheriff's Office. We got in the room with fire, and I really got the experience of what it's like to be a firefighter, how to assess the room, how to get people out. And they gave me a thermal camera to really see the temperatures. So, when you watch TV, you see firefighters run into a room. That doesn't happen. They're on their knees. And they're searching for bodies, and they're moving very deliberately and very planned. So it was a great experience. Certainly have a higher level of respect for firefighters, and I understand what their job entails. They're certainly very important. They're high-paid individuals, very skilled. Most of them, you have to be a paramedic these days, so they can perform life-saving items on people. And so it was a great experience. I loved it, and looking forward to doing a night ride with the firefighters as well.
Ooh, I want to do a night ride with the firefighters. That sounds way fun. You know what would happen though? Like I'd end up getting on it would be something like horrible would happen. And then I would have nightmares, and then it would ruin everything for me.
I think that the appreciation for a really strong labor movement is immensely important right now. One of the things that we are noticing, as we had mentioned previously before you came on, obviously DeSantis is going to do whatever he has to do in order to win. He is a take no prisoners, I'm open for business type of representative. Obviously, that's the dirty side of politics, but that's part of the kick ass and take names approach to politics that a lot of people like. Obviously, on the one hand, he puts out this legislation that adheres to this idea that big tech is overreaching. We completely agree with that. But what isn't getting talked about is the fact that he's now trying to cut off literally an entire quarter of unemployment benefits to basically get people back and working. And we all know, Mike, we know why he's doing this. This is completely political. They clearly got their job numbers. They're not looking good because people are not wanting to go back to menial paying jobs.
I have a suggestion.
What's that?
Pay them more money.
Yes. Yes. Now, now here's the funny thing, right? You read, listen to different news from NPR, Axios, Wall Street Journal, and they talk about the professionals who, because of the pandemic, they realized, they were paying too much attention to work and not having that work-life balance. And maybe they're thinking about different careers. So you have the folks in New York who were in Wall Street. Now they want to be in Miami. And so we talk about them in terms of wanting to have a better appreciation for life. But then when it's the low paid workers who are saying, you know what, I don't want to be on the front lines anymore. I want to get new skills and get a higher paying job. So maybe that's the reason why they're not going back to those jobs. But the media is selling it as because they're making so much money on unemployment, they don't want to go back to work. That's not the real story. They realize, some of them, that they're not being respected. And they watch friends die from COVID-19 being exposed. They don't want to return to those jobs, but they're not telling that story.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's like they're wanting to paint it as these are lazy people that don't want to work.
Yes.
And really it's not that at all. Yes. It's actually people realizing that they're tired of being cogs in a machine and living a life of rote, just going to work, barely scraping by and not being happy, and realizing that they've actually been happier not working. And it isn't because they're lazy. It's because they're not valued and appreciated where they work or being able to do what they want to do.
That's right.
And it's always to me such an impediment to any sort of like innovation and inspiration and things like that when people are forced in menial jobs just so that they cannot even afford to pay their bills.
Yes.
One of the best activists we obviously know have in Broward is Linda Joseph, who leads the charge for Fight for 15.
Yes.
You know, we were in Fort Lauderdale last week for the Fight for 15 rally for the McDonald's workers. Yes. Again, you know, we used to live in a country where people were simply chastised because they weren't working. Now we're living in a country, unbelievably, where people are being chastised because their job isn't good enough. I can't even fathom that that's possible. If you are willing to do work, and especially work that most people don't want to do, why would you not pay them to enjoy themselves at their job?
Right. Or how about just pay them enough so that they only have to work one job?
How about that?
Yes. I mean, what kind of philosophy is that to embrace? I mean, we should all embrace that. I mean, we all know that the best economics studies show that the real minimum wage should be $24 an hour. So, you know, I listen to several podcasts in the morning and they say that this podcast is sponsored by this great company that we all know of. I'm not going to name them. And they pay more than the federal minimum wage of $7 an hour. They pay $15. And I'm like, well, if you're this world-class company, why don't you set the standard and pay $20 an hour, $24 an hour, instead of the $15 that's already the minimum in many states in the United States? If you're a world-class company, then you should start with a world-class minimum wage level. Not
Mike, that's one less yacht. That we can't have that. That's one less yacht.
My understanding is that Bill Gates now has a yacht that actually has its own yacht.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
He has. He has like this uber ultra like largest yacht, and it has its own yacht.
Yes.
His yacht has yacht babies.
There is such thing as having just simply too much, and I know people want to try to, you know, play on that line of, well, you know, you're trying to reduce no, I mean, you're getting to the point now where the system is going to break. It can't sustain itself.
Absolutely.
And what's been your experience as the commissioner? Because obviously when it comes to North Broward, obviously there's a great deal of issues in terms of things like unemployment, low wage jobs. We're obviously trying to do our best to alleviate that issue. I would say at the federal level, we do pay close attention to, you know, certain major pieces of legislation. The only one that's come out of the Biden administration so far that I actually think would be really great would be the PRO Act, because it would alleviate the issue of right to work. It would supersede the state law, which basically puts workers in a total bind. Being able to rewrite that working law and give a lot more labor power to regular workers, I think would be great. But what's been your experience like in Tamarack when it comes to the local economy?
The local economy in Tamarack it's struggling a little bit, and we're doing what we can to attract major employers, and we're trying to do what we can to have more affordable housing. And so one of the issues that I'm thinking about right now is one of the top 5 companies in the U.S. is considering coming to our city, and they're talking about this minimum wage as if it's a great thing. But I know that the median income in Tamarack is $46,000 a year. I know that there's not a lot of affordable housing in our city, and so what is the benefit of bringing in a company that's going to bring in 200 to 400 employees at minimum wage? Is that going to benefit our city? It's great to have this, you know, wonderful brand company in our city, but if you're only going to pay the same wages as Walmart, then what is the real benefit? And that is not going to contribute to the economic vibrancy of our city. And so are we going to vote yes on this to have this great brand name company in our city and still have economic problems? And so that's where, as a policymaker, we need to step up and say, we do want you in our city, but we have a certain standard level that you need to abide by to have it. And I don't think the political will is there to make that happen.
So basically, it's like you have a company that wants to come in and they argue, oh, well, we're going to be providing lots of jobs, but there'll be low income, crappy jobs that isn't going to really raise anybody's standard of living in any way. Yeah. And right now, it's not a problem of lack of employment. It's quality employment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's all over South Florida. You know, we're a tourist economy. So we have all these jobs that are catered to the tourist economy, and they're all low pay jobs. And you have families working multiple jobs, so they're not there for their kids. They can't train their kids up in the right way because they're not there and they're not visible. They're basically struggling to get by. If they take a day off from work, that's an unpaid day.
Yep.
And so it's not good for the overall economy, and it's not good for families in our community.
What is your city like in terms of like homelessness or need for housing? Or are you talking about increasing housing just to increase economic viability? Like what's the need for affordable housing look like there?
So we do have somewhat of a homeless population. I don't know if some of that is Tamarack or it's other homeless people from other cities coming into Tamarack because we have more of a friendly environment. I've been getting a lot of calls from residents complaining, and they want me to call the police. And I said, look, our police officers are not going to arrest people and punish them for being homeless. And so we've actually put together a task force to work with Broward County to come up with a solution for the homeless. The school that my son goes to, I talk to the principal on a regular basis. They have a homeless population within the school. And so they're working with churches and they work with the hotels to make sure they have a place to stay. But we're doing what we can to address those issues. It's very tough. And we just do what we can. But one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that we bring more affordable housing to the city of Tamarack. And, you know, there's a negative perception to affordable housing. People think it's for poor people. People think it's for lazy people. But it's actually for people like teachers and police officers and firefighters, just regular people who are making a decent income, but the housing costs are so high in South Florida that they can't afford to live on their own without having to get 2 or 3 roommates to make their their wages cover as much as possible.
And this is, again, the prime argument for a living wage. It just doesn't make any sense not to have it. And again, there are so many benefits that come from it. And, we read a story the other day about an ice cream parlor, I think in Michigan, that offered a job for $15 an hour. They got like 1,000 applications.
Yes.
And they said that they had to stop, like they couldn't keep taking them. But it just goes to show you that if you pay, the working ethic, the worker's ethic will be there. It just will. And in the long run, it's ultimately going to pay dividends.
Yes.
And so by doing that,
the enthusiasm level went up, the service level went up, everything increased, and including the profit margin. They didn't figure that they would actually make more money by paying employees more in hourly wages.
Yeah.
And
fascinating.
I know. It's like, again, a circle that can't be squared for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, greed plays a very big role. Yeah. People want what they want. And of course, it's South Florida.
Florida is definitely, look, there's a combination of things that create a perfect storm. I mean, for our complete wealth inequality here. I mean, Florida's got horrid wealth inequality. You have overpopulation in areas, overdevelopment in areas, developers that are buying people off, not paying to rebuild infrastructure. Mm-hmm. They're building things you're building things on top of 60-year-old infrastructure and not fixing it, or you're dredging out entire mangrove systems to build marinas and you're not putting plants somewhere else. Like just all of these things. And I just feel like Florida is so vulnerable to a lot of it, overdevelopment. What is Tamarack like in terms of the development issue?
So in the next 60 to 90 days, we have a developer that wants to build about 400 homes on 2 golf courses. And so if you imagine you buy a home on a golf course to see this beautiful greenery, and all of a sudden it's going to be 4 or 5 homes in your backyard. So that's coming to our city in the next 60 to 90 days for us to vote on. The majority of the residents of the community are completely against it. However, it passed on first reading, and if it passes on second reading, it's going to happen. So the residents are very engaged, but yet they're very frustrated because they feel helpless. They feel hopeless. They feel like they can't trust their elected officials who are supposed to be there to represent them, and it didn't happen in the first reading. And they're very nervous about what's going to happen in the second reading, but they're concerned with overdevelopment. They're concerned with the traffic. They're concerned with not having the green spaces there. They're concerned with the fact that there are animal species there that call that place home, and it may not be home for them in the future with more development. So we have city staff and administration that are pushing for it. And we need, elected officials that will truly reflect the needs and the desires and the hopes of the residents that they're paid to represent.
How do you deal with that when your colleagues are clearly not doing their job in terms of representing the people, but they're representing whatever interest is that they're representing? How do you be on a commission? I don't understand. I feel like I would want to punch somebody in the face.
Yeah, it's tough because when it comes to federal law and state law, there is no sunshine law violation. You can actually talk about items outside of the public sphere. In local office, we cannot. So I can't call somebody and say, look, these are all the reasons why you should do this. We have to speak publicly at a commission meeting, and so all I can do is make the arguments, put the facts out there, express the views of the people, and hope that my fellow commissioners see it that way. But as elected officials, they have political action committees, and if their goal is to win the next election by the will of the developer and the lobbyists versus by the will of the people, which is much harder. It takes going door to door. It takes being very communicative and open with your residents. Then some take the easy way out, and they know that they can buy their votes if they get enough money from developers and lobbyists.
Mike, it's just so sad.
Yeah, we agree 1,000%. The biggest issue we face in politics today, bar none, is corporate special interest money in politics. It defines local as much as it defines federal. You cannot justify the fact that, let's say they actually put it to a vote amongst the people of Tamarack in regards to whether or not they want to have this overdeveloped golf course. It would probably be somewhere in the 80 to 85% range of people that would say no. The people who would vote in favor of it are the people who are going to financially benefit from it.
Yes.
Once you get away from that, there is no democracy here. This is clear cut. Yeah. If you take corporate special interest money, you are not going to answer to the people that you represent. As a non-corporate representative on the city commission, you are representing the people, and that's what makes you endearing. And I wish more people would recognize that as much as there are these distractions constantly in politics, all these big stories that come up left and right, everything is meant to distract you from the core reasons as to why we don't get anything done. And to me, this is the best example of it. This is a clear example. Tamarack is a middle class.
Is that Deutsch's district? Are you in Ted Deutsch's district?
I believe, yeah, that is Ted, right?
No, Alcee Hastings.
So
there you go.
It used to be Watson and Schultz, and then it became Alcee.
When it was 20, and now that it became the new 20. That's a very interesting point. There's going to be, right now there are
that race is a mess.
Oh, it's going to get worse.
That's a circus.
And so, as you know, a lot of people are going to be courting the Tamarack vote. I would imagine if somebody who's listening to this podcast right now is thinking about something that you need to be doing for North Broward, pay very close attention to what goes on in these local areas, because there are people that are running for Congress in this race, and I ain't going to name their names, but stop it. They will have no interest whatsoever in dealing with this issue because they are part of the problem. Right. So that is not going to change unless there is a representative that is able to get elected in that seat that is going to fight for people just as you're fighting for them. I can't thank you enough for coming on. We do have another panel coming on.
Do you see this? And by the way, just so you know, Mike, John Holder is our producer. So he's in the chat. So you're apparently very popular with our people.
Yes,
here,
apparently getting a lot of feedback. So you could be one of our friends of the show.
Or if you decide to jump into the race for Alcee's seat, we could have you back on to discuss that. Because why not? Everybody and their mother is jumping in that race.
Hey, at this point, you get about 15, 16 people in the race. Someone who gets 10% of the vote is going to be the next congressman.
That's right.
But as you know, and this is why even if you're thinking about long-term politics, the one thing that we've already talked about is even whoever ultimately ends up winning this primary in November, they are going to get another challenge once the next election comes around. It's way too close together.
Exactly.
You've got the general election in January, and you'll have another primary in less than 8 months.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, this is going to be sort of like a hot potato type
I think
of
it's
situation.
It's amusing.
Fun. It's going to be Florida at its very best.
All right. Well, we could bring you back to talk about that. When that happens. Thank you, Mike.
Mike Gellen, City Commissioner of Tamarack, Florida. Hey, there is hope in Florida, baby.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mike.
Very welcome, Mike. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
As you can see, we do have a lot of, positives here and there. It's not
there are glimmers. There are glimmers of hope.
Yes.
There are glimmers of hope of progress in Florida.
And while it may have a glimmer of hope at the local level, which is a great thing, there was evidently a very, very big vote that took place this weekend with the Florida Democratic Party.
So for anybody who is familiar, our state Democratic Party had a weighted vote system, which we can get into how that worked. But needless to say, it was not all that democratic. And so recently a vote took place where we are seeing some progress being made in our state party. So we're going to bring on some people who are responsible for making that happen, which is definitely a step in the right direction.
I want to give a shout out to one of the great progressive organizers in North Florida, Christina Stewart, who was part of Osceola for Bernie.
And also a Generational Change Patreon.
Yes, she is a super duper awesome person who helped bring all of this together.
Yes, thank you, Christina. This was great.
I think it's very important that people really understand the minutia of politics. There are a lot of people who have this misconception about whether or not change within the Democratic Party is possible. I would tell you, stop believing that it can't happen. If you have interest in a third party, that's perfectly fine. But if you are willing to put in the work and learn the minutia of how these things are done, change can absolutely happen. And
especially looking at Nevada.
Clearly looking at Nevada. And of course, with what is ultimately happening now, as far as the pushback that is coming from the establishment in the Florida Democratic Party, it's clear that a massive impact has been made. And so with that said, there is a amazing lineup of individuals that we are going to bring into the studio now, some local, some across the state.
Okay, well, when you say, okay, everybody's Florida because this is Florida.
Yes.
Okay, so
But
nobody's too far.
That nobody is too far.
Nobody's too far. We're not bringing in anybody, too far. But yeah, I mean, and this is, you know what? It's important to recognize the diversity around the state, and that South Florida is not the be all end all of Florida.
No.
And that is
often,
although
a lot of people that are voters down here
they
for the
think
way to
that,
vote, they do think that.
But we're not. And I think that there is a certain amount of resentment in other parts of the state towards South Florida.
There is.
And I don't blame them. I think it's annoying. And so, and in our progressive community, I think Central Florida definitely has us beat in a lot of ways.
I think that the I-4 corridor is definitely taking over to a degree. How quickly it's going to happen, I'm not sure. But with obviously an amazing progressive leader like Anna Escamani, along with Carlos Guillermo Smith, there are good people that are coming along that are really driving the narrative where it needs to go. So without further ado, we're going to bring in an all-star panel.
It's exciting.
We will start with our good friend, Tomas Kennedy.
Hi, Tomas. Long time no see since last week.
And a sharp haircut, I must say. We are, of course, also going to bring in one of the great leaders in the middle of our state, as you know, Nadia Ahmad.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello. We're going to start doing our own little.
Well, once there's more than two squares, it starts to look like Hollywood squares to me. Yes. And then I can't help but go off on that sort of thing.
We are going to bring in the brainchild, the attorney, if you will, who definitely knows the ins and outs of what the ramifications of this vote means, why it's
very
important,
exciting.
And what
so
we can do
this is somebody
forward.
who can do weighted vote for dummies.
Weighted vote. Yeah, one of those famous books,
Well, because
right?
this is one of those things that I'm going to need charts. Go on.
Nancy Jacobson, welcome to Generational Change.
Oh, I remember you. We met, right? We met in Orlando.
Yes, we did.
Hi,
yes, we did.
How are you? I would never know by name, but I know when I see you. Okay.
And last but not least, the former and awesome progressive leader of the Broward Progressive Caucus, who has done endless work behind the scenes to make sure
Cauldron. All I can
we
see is beard.
Yes, so he's got an impressive beard going on.
Oh yeah, is that a COVID beard? What's going there?
I actually started off COVID by shaving the whole thing, so this is all
exactly
relatively new growth.
That's great.
Well, kudos to you for doing something that I could never do, even if I tried.
Look, kudos to being very productive during this shutdown.
Yes,
oh,
absolutely. Yeah. So whoever would like to have the floor first, I would probably recommend Nadia.
We need a little background. Whoever would give the best background as to how this has worked in the past, because most people would never even fathom this.
I think anytime anybody hears weighted
vote,
Nancy,
he's quoting to Nancy.
There you go. Anytime anybody says
that would probably be me.
It doesn't sound very democratic.
No, so explain how the process was in the party.
Okay, so how the process was in the party was, instead of allocating people to, based on Democratic registration and Democratic performance to the various counties, they were allocating votes. And in the very beginning, in the 70s, when this was all written up for the first time, the state was much, much less populous than now. It's like 3 times as much now. And but as the state grew, particularly in Southeast Florida, it became very unwieldy and very unfair, because all of a sudden there were people at that time carrying 20 or 30 votes. And I recently learned that Dr. Bailey, who was the longtime rules chair and one of the primary writers of the original thing, with another one of a great Florida Democrat, Chuck Mulkey, tried after the 2000 census to reform and change and move away from the weighted vote, because it was during the 2000 census that they noticed how out of balance it had become, and it failed. And I got on the Rules Committee in 2005. We were talking about it then. We've been talking about it ever since. And because you need 2/3 of the vote to change the bylaws, and when you have the weighted vote, you need the weighted vote to get rid of the weighted vote.
Right. That's the irony of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, right.
But how was it decided who would get how many votes? Like, I looked at the list where it says so-and-so has, so for people who are like, don't know, this is their delegates. Yes. This is like people that vote in the party election.
Correct.
And certain people would have more votes allocated to their name just because
of they were only one of 2 people in each county. And as the large counties grew even larger, it was based on Democratic voter registration, the number of registered Democrats in your county, plus Democratic performance. How well did the Democrats do in the most recent presidential and the most recent Senate races? And so those 2 things, there's a formula. It's actually the formula. There's nothing wrong with the formula. It was that it was assigned to 2 people, and that was all. Just 2 people. And so the number of votes each person was carrying kept growing.
Nancy, what would be, obviously, the only way this was going to change was a number of people who have significant amount of weighted votes in their favor.
That's what she was saying, to vote against their own interests. So who initiated this?
Yeah, was there anybody in particular, guys? You know, obviously, Tomas and Nadia, I would love for you guys to comment, because you guys are now state delegates. So this is a big deal. And obviously, you learn a lot about what goes on at the federal level. You know, obviously, we've heard a lot of stories about how this ultimately came to pass. Was there a specific movement that you guys, you know, kind of worked on and thought, you know what, we really got to change this, and we've really got to figure out a way to coalesce across the state? Whoever would like to jump in.
Don't all come in at once.
Do you want to take this, or should I?
You can go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Tomas or Nadia.
Yeah, I'll start. So I'll say that this came to my attention when I first got involved with the Democratic Party, which was around 2016. I had worked for like labor in the labor union field and for third-party organizations, and obviously the election of Trump made me want to look under the hood and see like what's happening at the state party. And at the time, this billionaire that ended up having to resign because of sexual harassment accusations used the weighted vote to basically, you know, commit a bunch of shenanigans that we won't get into, and basically crown himself the new chair of the Florida Democratic Party. So from the get-go, my impression of the party was of an incredibly undemocratic space where decision-making power was concentrated in the hands of a few. So the weighted vote was immediately something that I identified as like, this is toxic and it's preventing the organization from functioning in a healthy manner. So I can tell you, you know, that as I joined the DNC, and Nadia can attest to this, I think we would agree on this, is that Florida is kind of like the black sheep of the state parties in the United States. Like, as we met DNC members from across the country, they would be like, oh, like you're from Florida? Like,
that's a combination of disdain and pity.
Yeah. And I would say that we had a chat with like a lot of DNC members from across the country, and we put on the chat like, guys, like we did it, the weighted vote goes down. They were all like, yes, like amazing, because as was noted, the DNC wants us to get rid of this archaic Byzantine system. So the news was met with joy from the delegates from other states.
That's good. So you're saying on a national level, we were as usual, Florida.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I can attest to that as well, because I spent 8 years on the DNC from 2012 to from 2008 until through 2016. And when I got there, I had no idea, but Florida's delegation was always considered one of the weakest. And it was disappointing.
Nadia, you happen to be in what I think is the real changing of the guard part of the state, which is, of course, the I-4 corridor. If you could speak to the differences, because obviously down here in Broward, Miami-Dade is coming along. I don't know
why you say that. I mean, I think Miami-Dade and Broward should kind of be.
No,
I
but
think
you got to
together would be more effective.
Maybe, but of course, in this instance, you got to give credit where credit's due.
Okay.
Miami-Dade, particularly, got to give credit to Annette Taddeo and William Byatt. They voted,
but it's not like Nadia's area.
No, there's definitely a real progressive uprising that is happening, and like we alluded to, Anna Eskamani, who we were hoping was going to run for governor. Obviously, it's not happening, but nevertheless has done an amazing job of leading a really progressive wave. We had Amari Hardy on the podcast recently. He could not stop lauding her and just talking about what an impact she has had. And of course, Carlos Guillermo Smith has done an amazing job. So I'm curious from your perspective, how things ultimately are going, up in Orange County and in that region in regards to this idea that we really are going to change the archaic ways that the Florida Democratic Party has operated with for quite some time.
I just want to interject for 1 second, and I'll just say, this is not just. I mean, Anna is amazing, like my favorite lawmaker in Florida. But I do want to say that, Annette Taddeo, who's like fairly progressive, but not as progressive as Anna, was like full on, and she's a state committee woman from Miami-Dade, so she has a huge amount of votes. She was full on supportive of this and voted with us. And Audrey Gibson, also a state senator from Duval, also supportive of this. So it's like Nancy said, this is like a broad coalition of people from all sides of the political spectrum within the party that are just trying to, like, again, encourage grassroots participation and try something new, because what we've been doing for decades is not getting us to the place of winning.
Agreed 100%.
Yeah, what I would add is that what we see happening in Central Florida is that the suburbs are expanding further out. And so you have Volusia County is also considered somewhat of a suburb of Orlando. And so this growth that we're having is not being met with changes in the party that should be happening with the changes in demographics. So for example, this is one of the things that I mentioned on the meeting on Saturday, was that we had Hurricane Maria happen in 2017. We already have named storms. We saw rapid demographic shifts as people were displaced from Puerto Rico. And we weren't able to capture a demographic that is historically democratic. And so that really speaks to the problem of messaging that we have within the state. And I think that really we're starting to see more happening within the I-4 corridor, but we're also starting to see expansion of the grassroots movement more broadly.
Yeah,
that's an excellent.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, and that is a great segue, Michael, to unfortunately, Broward. It's definitely there's so many different
Broward.
There's many different places we can go with it, but. It did seem that they were completely united behind this idea that they were going to keep the weighted vote. A lot of those votes ultimately ended up going that way. I'm not sure if you
can I say that I was not remotely surprised by who voted for that and who didn't. Like can you? It's really, if you had to check and go down the list and just guess it, you'd be spot on.
Yeah, it kind of.
There was at least one other vote in Broward besides my own who voted to make the change.
Who was?
It was the delegate for the Florida Young Democrats. And that really, I think, speaks to the generational divide that we're seeing here. Yeah. It's not drawn on any lines more clear than it is there. Young people want a seat at the table. They want to feel valued. They want to be heard. And Who can blame them? We all did when we were that age. And what has been done to enable that until now?
That's an excellent point. And Nancy, obviously, I want to circle back to you because, as you know, I equate what happened with we don't have to name his name. It's not important. But somebody who made a mistake in terms of how they voted. I equate it to no different than the voters in Palm Beach and Broward County who voted for Pat Buchanan. You may not have intended to vote for Pat Buchanan. You clearly wanted to vote for Al Gore, but you voted for Pat Buchanan. And the mistake ultimately falls on the person.
Are you telling me that happened, like something like that happened in this vote?
Basically, that's what happened.
Is that what happened to your friend?
And so the question
I'm
now,
just
Nancy,
so sad.
is there going to be, do they have any type of legal recourse to try to challenge this? I've already seen one of the people who were in favor of the weighted vote put that message out there, that they think that they have some type of legal standing to try to reverse this decision. I'm curious from your perspective if they have anything to stand on, or if this is a done deal, basically.
Okay, so they made a decision because as of the time I came on, I had not heard it and I had been waiting for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I see 2 texts here on my phone, which probably indicate what happened.
Okay, people, we're getting like up to the minute news. Like, this is exciting.
We're
it's almost
bracing.
like, we don't ever,
We're all at the edge of our seats right now.
We really are.
For real.
You're talking about the response to the grievance?
Yeah.
The grievance.
They
tell somebody where to stick their grievance.
No, they actually did.
Lots of
Are you
grievance.
telling me that somebody was making the equivalent argument of they had a hanging Chad, or they made a
They
mistake?
haven't decided. They haven't decided.
Yeah.
There are certain questions regarding voting procedures and their effect on the final vote tally that we are currently working to clarify. We hope to have the issue finalized in the coming days, but wanted to transmit this letter to keep the committee apprised of our progress and to comply with our commitment.
But I will say that their response does say that as of now, it passed.
That's great.
Yeah. But I will say,
I didn't read it.
Peter, I do disagree with your assessment a little bit because, like those people that you referenced to in that election actually voted, right? Like what happened here is, because people were also talking about like this person should be able to cure their ballot, right? Like they should be able to fix their ballot. Like that's fine, but like you can only cure a ballot if you actually voted. Like this
these are people that didn't vote.
Yeah. What actually happened to this person is they actually didn't vote because they didn't follow the directions that were repeatedly told to us multiple times. It happens, but it is the equivalent of you not putting your vote on the mailbox or the voting booth, whatever.
Okay.
Like the vote was actually never casted.
Right.
And now they're wanting it to be counted because they didn't like the outcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think at that point of the ballot being cast or not cast, all of those points are moot. That any challenges that are brought forward are not going to be in compliance with Robert's rules. Everyone was given instructions on how to follow the voting procedures. Everyone was also reminded during the vote that they had to follow these procedures. And if anyone deviated from that, they can't come back after the fact, after the chair has declared the results, everyone's seen the results. There were different procedures during the voting that we had online than there have been at previous in-person meetings, but the precedent that was set by the original election that happened back in January for the different SEC positions really sets the precedent that what I really see is a done deal in terms of any challenges that could be brought forward. I would be really surprised for the grievance committee to even to really to consider it as broadly as it could be. I really think that it's a done deal.
Yeah. So it's governed now by Robert's Rules of Order, and then all the things that they're talking about, like the instructions they have, all play a role in the decision. But one of the things I've been fond of saying for the last 2 days is that if every election were held up and had to be done over or whatever because of voter error, there would never be an election that was ever finished and final. So it seems to me pretty clearly to have been voter error, and that is not a basis for overturning what happened. But
the irony that it ended up becoming a voter error, which is something that the establishment always pulls on the grassroots in terms of anything that they can find, to make it so, is unfortunate. Now that it appears, knock on wood,
what is that look like?
So now that the weighted vote appears to have been alleviated, one of the things that I think could be addressed is this idea that we have our own state filibuster, if you will. The idea that you need a 2/3 majority to get anything passed. Is there any talk of potentially now removing the supermajority vote and making it a simple majority, if that's even an issue that's even been brought up as of yet?
I just want to.
Well, no, that
that
was only for the bylaws. That was only for the bylaws change. That it's a super. Normally, it's just a supermajority. Not a supermajority, just a bare majority vote.
I was not aware of that.
Only for bylaws.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to address what you said a little bit, because if that is not a testament as to why we need to change the system, then what is? The fact that something so monumental, right, as like changing the way that we conduct elections in the party was left to the voting error of one person.
One person.
And that was it. They had enough power to shift the election one way or the other. It worked out for the betterment of the whole electorate and the whole party here. And if we would have just democratized the process, right? Like over 60% of the electorate wanted this change to be done, right? But the fact that such a single person has so much power over where the party needs to go, it's not good. It's not good, and it's a testament as to why we need to change this and give more voices decision-making power.
And let me try to illustrate that a little bit. Tomas, Nadia, and I each have one single vote. This person had almost 60 votes.
Yes.
So
59.
To get anything done, why talk to the three of us? Why talk to all the people with one or two votes when you can go and talk to the 14 people that have between 25 and 60 votes each?
Yeah, and those 14 people had a majority of the votes. Just 14 people. Just 14 people.
So it's like super delegates.
Yeah. Look, I'm a DNC member. No one calls me for anything. No one cares about me. I only have one vote.
Yeah.
You only have one vote. That's so sad.
Yeah, so very democratic, which is the way that it should be. I'm curious, of the 14 that had what you would consider which you would consider an overvalued vote.
How many of them were on the correct side on this issue?
How many did actually cross?
All but 4.
Oh.
4. I know one of them, we'll say his name. I know one of them was Ricky Lai. Hats off to him. He really, really did.
I think we should definitely give props to people who did it. We don't need to point out people who didn't. There's no point in doing that. Yeah. But I think it's okay to point out people who did that because it's the right thing to do. Yes,
100%. Do you guys want to mention the other 3 people who did ultimately decide to vote, basically relinquishing their power for the sake of democracy?
Annette was one of them.
Yes, and William Byatt, and
and we're having her on our show soon.
Yes, and that is coming
both of the state committee people in Duval, in Hillsborough, in Sarasota, in Pinellas, in Volusia, in Alachua. Alachua's not one of the large counties.
Notice how none of those.
I'm just trying to point out.
God, we're so pathetic.
Larry Snyder, we know Larry, great activist, great job. That means a lot.
Of course he did.
Larry's one of the hardest workers I've seen in Florida. So Tomas knows he's really something. So get involved at the local level.
This is how we can
stress this enough. It's so important. This is what the GOP does. They have everything at the ground level covered up. Everything. They treat a committee precinct person like they're the most important person in the world. And that's why they win, even when they are so horrible when it comes to what they stand for.
Yeah, they don't. But no, they work better as a machine. They do. And certainly in Florida. I mean, that's not necessarily the case everywhere, but certainly here.
No, this is definitely big. So from your perspective, and the last thing I want to touch upon in terms of the people who had the heavily weighted vote, and now that they don't, what were some of the advantages that they ultimately did have prior to the weighted vote changing, and now what are the things that ultimately will change going forward? Whoever would like to take that one.
Well, one of the things is what Michael indicated is why talk to anybody else but those 14. So that gives them an awful lot of influence, and there's an awful lot of deal making that goes on. What committee do you want or whatever, and that will now. But I do need to point out that this will not take full effect until October of 2024. Right now, we're going to be working forward on building up the diversity and inclusion mechanisms in the various counties so that we can have a really diverse 400 people coming next in the next four-year cycle. But anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. It isn't like instant.
Right. No, I understand. And I'm sure that the people who voted no will grasp on for every last inch of power that they possibly can.
Now that you mention it, are there things that we should be looking out for potentially? It's almost like, now that
they're going to be losing what can they be doing on their way out the door?
What might they be doing? That's the question.
Well, you did mention how important it is to get involved at the local level. And so part of this diversity and inclusion plan means ensuring that each county's Democratic Party or DEC actually looks like the registered Democrats in that area. So pay attention to how that work is being done, how that outreach is being done. Make sure that your communities are represented the way you expect, and run for those seats. Many of them are open and available. It's just a matter of us reaching out and saying, why don't you sign up for this? We think we could use your voice.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how simple it is, and that there are so many open seats. I mean, do any of you know how many open? Because there was.
Michael, if you could speak to that, for example, I think there's like so many open precinct committee spots that if people wanted to get involved in Broward alone, it's like in the hundreds or something. Am I right?
Oh, easily in the hundreds. There are thousands across the state.
Yeah. And those are sitting open positions that people could be filling with their presence.
Every precinct has to have at least 2 people. Bigger precincts with more people have more representation. If it's not filled, it's just open. You can walk right in and say, I want to do this.
How do people know if there's
if there's a good place that you guys would recommend if people want to go?
Like, how do people know whether their precinct has people in it or not?
They should go to the website for their county Democratic Party, and probably they're going to have to send a message and ask. And it's usually the membership committee, and the membership committee can tell you right away if there's an opening in your precinct. And more likely than not, there is. I'm sorry to say, but that's the facts. Here in Orange County, it's hundreds, and we have a fairly large DEC. But
okay, because ours is not that. Our DEC, as we know, is not all that.
and unfortunately, our DEC are not actively seeking out people to come and fill those posts, which is something that we more or less just kind of have to do it on our own.
Yeah,
and that I think
that will probably have to change.
Yes, well, of course. I mean, again, being more involved at the local level is really the key.
Why can't Broward get it together?
Well, again, there's. Michael, if there's what
I'm not sure I can answer that question. But I will say this for people who are listening or watching in Broward County. If you are interested, reach out to me. Let me try to help you get in the right direction, get the information you need. I could do that much.
Okay. Because Broward, it is definitely, there's a dearth of, and certainly of people that we want to be involved in stuff. We're not as progressive as one would want.
And that is a great segue back to Tomas. I don't think we can say enough about what the Miami progressives have done. They were immensely active during both of Bernie's presidential runs, but they never lost sight of the long-term goal. The fact that William Byatt is a part of it now. Annette Taddeo, obviously, who is a state senator and voted in favor of the democratic process, I think just speaks to the fact that they sense that the change is happening and it needs to happen, even if it didn't necessarily happen in Broward or Palm Beach County. But the fact that it did happen in Miami-Dade definitely, can't say enough. And they did, if you think about it, subtracting what ultimately ended up happening in Broward, those 2 key votes in Miami-Dade, you could say, ultimately made the difference in the election.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I won't harp too much on it. I mean, I think, Peter, you are correct. I don't want to tout like the or a little too much, but I will say that I think Annette and buy it actually genuinely are disturbed by this undemocratic system in the party, and they genuinely do want to relinquish their vote share for the benefit of the broader Democratic Party in Florida. So I really don't think that it was actually them putting like their finger up in the air and seeing which way the wind is blowing. They have been working on, I've known them for years, and they've always been like, this system sucks and we have to get rid of it. So, when they did the right thing at the end of the day. And, some people actually talk about it, and then when they get their vote share, they bait and switch us, but they came through. Yeah, they came through with it.
So what is the next step as far as what we should be looking to do going forward
within the party? I mean, this is, we looked at Nevada as sort of like this blueprint idea as to what could happen within a few years within a state party, and then what that means for progressive candidates going forward, not being blacklisted and ghosted when they have their own kind in positions of power. So, do you guys think about that kind of concept going forward, about just getting more of an infiltration and what else we could do now that you were able to do this?
Potentially even some ballot measures in 2022 that might make sense for us to be fighting for.
Yeah. I'll just say I don't think about it as an infiltration, because we belong here. Like, this is our fucking party. So I think what people should be doing right now is exactly what we were talking about just a little bit ago, is sign up precinct captains, sign as many precinct captains as possible, and just spread the decision making around and democratize the process. And we have to make sure that this weighted vote reform not only stands, but is perfected by 2025. And then of course, we have big elections coming up statewide. We got to beat Ron DeSantis. We got to beat Marco Rubio. We got to flip congressional seats. So we got to do that work as well. But at the bottom line, in terms of bettering the Democratic Party, I think it's as basic as just sign up as many precinct captains as possible to your local county DEC.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize they should go to the county Democratic Party website, because typically the supervisor of elections website or the office really does not have updated information on that. That's the membership committees in your particular county Democratic Party. There are always openings, and bring friends.
And Tomas, to piggyback on what you said, you're right. This is our party. This is not they treat us like we're infiltrators, but the reality is everybody's welcome. And as I like to emphasize every time we do this show, anytime we talk to anybody when it comes to this political divide, it's very simple. It's corporate versus non-corporate. You are either accepting of this idea that we are fighting for certain change within a party that has members that are okay with it being funded by Big Sugar, by NextEra Energy, by Walmart, and we are trying to change that because we believe that this should be a party that represents working people. And so the more we emphasize the importance of electing non-corporate representatives at all levels, not just obviously Congress matters. The governor's race is obviously very important. And of course, the U.S. Senate. Can't emphasize enough that we can learn a lot from the things that the GOP does do, which is they emphasize the importance of the local precinct committee positions. They are very important. And the more people are willing to get involved, the more you will have that even bigger seat at the table. I'm the treasurer now of the Broward Progressive Caucus, and I'm proud to help.
Yeah, fancy title. Fancy title.
But we all have a role to play, and we all, want to do things. Here, obviously, we do our podcast. We have a local organization that is involved with community service efforts. The more that we do these types of things, the more the change becomes much more of what is considered the norm rather than the fringe. And I think we are changing that. And I think listen, you know what? You want to call it divine intervention? I don't know what it was that ultimately allowed us to get the onside kick, if you will, to fall in our favor, but I'm taking it and I'm not apologizing for it. And I have friends that are on the side that wanted the weighted vote to stay, but you know what? Times are changing.
I don't have any friends on that side. Okay, fair
enough. I'll give you one more thing. I'm here pitching for the DECs when in fact I should be pitching for our own organization. I'm the current president of the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Florida. come join us, join your county chapters. Whether you want to join your DEC or not, that's a great way to get involved, great way to help progressive candidates talk about progressive issues. And if you want, be that progressive change within the party. Go to progressivefl.org.
Centrist, not apply. Mike, interesting.
Good, Mike.
I was supposed to be on some sort of platform committee and was told that I would be notified, and then nothing ever happened. What happened to the platform committee, Mike?
Platform committee is a little bit on hold right now. It's coming up soon, though.
I'm just glad that we finally have something that we can really, I would say, run with. I think that this is very big. I can't thank you guys enough for coming on. This has obviously been very informative, because that's really what we need to do. The more we inform, the more we spread the word. I really want everyone to, again, we have to work with as many people as we can. This is not, we're going to take our football and now run with it and we're going to kick you guys out. No, we're basically trying to show everybody that change is possible, and this is what's holding us back. It's not a question of that person over there who supported that idea. It's about focusing on the structural issues that are keeping us from having a party that actually responds to the will of the people. That has always been the biggest hang up that we've had to deal with. And I think we are definitely moving the ball in the right direction. So with that said, we want to give the floor to you guys. Each of you, if you want to make a final statement, please do. Anything you want to plug, by all means.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll get started just to say, Peter, to build on your comment there. This change on the weighted vote was not really a progressive-led issue. There have been people from all stripes within the party who have been working on that. I mean, you heard Nancy, been working on this for a decade or two. So this was an opportunity for progressives to form larger alliances and find allies who may not see things exactly the way we do, but understand that we can work together to bring change.
Very well said.
Yeah, I'd second that, and I'd say that what happened on Saturday, and I'm going to assume that it will stick, is a great step forward for small d democracy in the Democratic Party, which will better be able to listen to the people, because there will be more of them across a broader spectrum involved in the party.
Yeah.
Before Saturday, I really was frustrated with being involved as a precinct captain with my DEC and even with the DNC. But after we were able to bring about the change, I really felt excited about it, and I knew that we could do more effective organization and mobilizing going forward. And I did want to put in 2 plugs. The first one is there's going to be a national march for Palestine in Washington, D.C. If any organizations would be willing to support and endorse the march, I would really appreciate it if you could reach out to me. And also, we're looking to build out an Asian American caucus at the Florida Democratic Party. So if anybody is interested in doing
Asian American caucus, you said.
Yeah, Asian American.
Asian, okay.
Nadia, do you have a date for the Palestine March on Washington?
The Palestine March is on this Saturday. And so we have about 70 organizations that are currently endorsing the march.
That's May 27th?
29th.
29th.
There you go.
It's National Palestine March.
Is there
May
anything
29th.
happening statewide or locally that is parallel to that?
There's a number of cities that are hosting marches, and there's just a growing movement worldwide. Over the weekend, there's 200,000 folks that marched in London. And all across, we're seeing that this is really a moment of international solidarity that is building. The same way ordinary people were able to change the tide in South Africa, we see that same type of movement building right now in the U.S. for Palestine.
All right, cool. Excellent. Tomas?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, and this is not to call anyone out because, whatever. But, before the vote, people were like, this is not going to pass. Like, why am I even going to burn political capital in this? We don't have the votes. And I was like, yo, everybody stay on formation because this is going to be close. Like, my point is, like, don't get discouraged. Like, don't ever doubt yourself. Like, it's, obviously I'm not trying to put this on the same scope as the, like, South African struggle against apartheid, but Nelson not at all. But Nelson Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done," and that goes for a lot of things, right? So, like, whatever your fight is, whatever you're trying to change, like, don't get discouraged. Believe in yourself, push forward, and like, you can do it. So that's all I gotta say. Just believe in yourself and fight on.
Nadia Ahmad, Tomas Kennedy, Michael Calderon, and Nancy Jacobson, 4 amazing leaders in the rapidly changing
He's such an announcer
Democratic
voice.
Party. Yeah, well,
Yes, such
I gotta,
an
hey, we
announcer
got to make the
voice.
podcast work, right? So it's all good.
Someone has
Thank-
to.
Thank you for having us.
No,
Very
this was great. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you guys. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. That was very good. I mean, I can't really say
No,
enough
I
about
don't.
how
I don't generally want to sit and talk about how much I enjoy engaging with the party, but this was actually quite pleasant.
And again, I think this
but-
is a welcoming group. This isn't
Yes.
like you're running against Debbie. That's Debbie C. It's
That's
like
Debbie
that
C.
stuff. That stuff's going away. It's going away.
Well, it's definitely it needs to.
It may take a long time to go away in Broward, but it's
Okay,
going
we
away
will be
around
the last
state.
bastion of progress for sure.
We
But
talk all the time about how Florida is the last state that'll get anything right,
And
Broward
Broward.
will be the last county that
it's
gets
so
it right.
sad, but it's true.
Well, we're working our way.
The question remains: will it happen before or after we're underwater? Because I need to know how much. We need to figure out like investing in scuba gear.
I think that we definitely have
Was great.
Have done a. This has been a great show. And
He says that almost every show, though.
Well, I take.
He's always like, "This is a great show."
Well, I take cues from Crystal and Sagar because they always say that every show. Every show's a great show. Every
show's a great show. We have a great show.
So,
you know what we should do? We should come on and say, we have a real crappy show for you guys.
But we're going to do our best to make sure it doesn't stink too bad. So that's basically
that could be our tagline. We have a crappy show today, folks.
So for those that are going to hang around for the final 10 minutes of our show, we have one more very important story, which I really wanted to get on. Because this is going to take time to talk.
He did. He's got a rant coming. We're back to finishing up the news. So here's the rant.
For anybody who was paying attention to what was happening recently with the billionaire class, particularly Elon Musk, who wanted everyone to know that he gave $150 million in the first quarter.
Oh my God, that's so generous of him.
To charities and
he's so philanthropic. He's one of those really, really
one of the good
billionaires.
He's the good billionaire. And so why was it that he was giving $150 million
oh my God, that's
in
so
a
much
quarter
money.
For charity? Because he doesn't want to get hit with a $5 billion tax bill, because that's what is potentially coming if they slightly move the marginal tax rate so that he has to pay for all of this money he's made during the pandemic. I mean, God forbid he's only going to make off with 85 billion instead of 90.
He has to come off looking extremely philanthropic, and he is just such a charitable man.
The reason why, above every other reason, that we do not have universal health care in the United States, even though it is clearly the will of the people.
Yes.
This is not going away. This is
no, we're having universal health care.
It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how fast we can make it happen. And so how do we know that this is happening? Because the HCA Healthcare sets up a $50 million fund to support local charities, several across Florida. And of course,
how generous of them.
Yeah, but why would they do that?
I don't know. Why would a for-profit health insurance company be so generous? Doesn't seem right when they're only concerned with their shareholders and their bottom line. So how does this really affect them?
At the end of the day, it's not that hard, unfortunately, to buy off local representatives, state representatives, or federal representatives.
And quite honestly, even organizations.
That's true. And that's a really good point. And again, we don't have to single out organizations. All I can tell you is that any organization that has a nonprofit, which really means a for-profit motive, is not on the side of universal health care. That includes certain progressive organizations on the left. If you are for universal health care, then you are for universal health care, and you will speak on that. Medicare for all through a single payer system is the most logical path forward that will get us universal health care.
And really what's so pathetic about this to me, this is one of those stories where it's meant to be this feel-good story, but it infuriates me to no end.
5-6 years ago, it would be perceived as a feel-good story.
And not to me, maybe, but maybe to others.
The narrative nationally has changed so dramatically.
Here's the problem with this, okay? We should not be in a position where where we need local charities to be providing health care. So the fact that this big, very patriarchal type of charity donation, we're going to give you money for your little sad, poor, unhealthy people, when really they're siphoning the money at the top to the point where we don't have health care in the first place.
Correct.
It's extremely misleading. It is similar to the Elon Musk story, but this to me is even infinitely more nefarious, because this is one of those things where they're actually giving the charity in the exact industry wherein they're hurting the most people simultaneously.
Correct.
Whereas with Elon Musk, it's just like, all right, I'm giving this to charity.
And healthcare is a non-starter. It's basically the one industry where everyone's looking at it now and being like, this cannot be a for-profit industry anymore. And there's a lot of industries where a lot of people are looking at that. Listen, we know that the story about Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein is only going to get worse. But the one thing that was talked about that I thought was very interesting is that Bill Gates was basically trying to buy his way into a Nobel Peace Prize. And what that
doesn't surprise me at all.
But what that tells you is that everything's for sale. Everything in our country today, we are in really the late stages of the current incarnation of American capitalism.
It's in its like death throes. It's really bad.
Well, because they can't hide it anymore. People are well aware of how this is being done. So when a major health industry organization is shelling out tens of millions of dollars for local charities, it's because they are doing everything in their power to stop any type of legislation that is going to lead to universal health care. That's all this is about. They would never have, first of all, a lot of times yesteryear, they wouldn't even feel the need to really announce it publicly. Now they feel the need to let everybody know that, hey, we're super charitable. We're giving all this money away. And
it's disgusting to me.
Oh, it is. But what I love is the fact that people are looking at it and saying, yeah, this is total BS. We're not buying this. It doesn't make any sense. And you're right. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense to their stockholders because they have calculated, they have calculated that donating that $50 million is much more economically, in their better interest than it would be to not donate the $50 million. This is not a gift. It is nothing out of the kindness of their hearts. If they're giving that $50 million, it's because that is the more profitable thing for them to do.
I like the idea that there are really a lot of people now who see these organizations giving a boatload of money in charity and saying, yeah, something's up. They're not doing that.
I don't know that they do.
care.
I don't know, but I know that I feel like it's our job to call it out as much as possible. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, any for-profit company doesn't do things out of the kindness of their heart. Their bottom line is their shareholders, and that is it.
Let's be specific here, because there are a lot of I'm a small business owner. I am not going to go there. What I will say though,
I'm talking about these companies.
Any publicly
shareholders
traded company.
I'm talking about with shareholders. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Any company that is associated in any capacity with Wall Street, this is what you're going to do.
I was saying with shareholders. They're only concerned with the shareholders. And there are organizations that work better than others, that are kinder to their people than others. But their bottom line is what matters.
Now do you understand why when I ran for president, I constantly said that we have to tax Wall Street? That was one of the ways that we were going to afford to give tuition.
That's not enough. Look, your good friend Elizabeth Warren was all hard on Wall Street. What happened to her?
Well, unfortunately, she's not doing so good right now, but we are working really hard to make sure, I've been in a lot of trouble lately. I've just been trying to do the right thing between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
It's always so ridiculous when you're wearing the t-shirt.
I'm trying really hard. There's not a lot that
imagine
I can do,
Bernie in my t-shirt.
But we are going to have universal health care in the United States.
Yeah, we are. I believe that'll be your legacy.
It should be my.
Well, I believe that will be your legacy.
Well, thank you, Jen. I really appreciate that. You keep saying that.
And even when I'm not thrilled with you, I do believe that will be your legacy.
Well, listen, you keep saying such nice things about me. If you run again, I might consider endorsing you. I'm just saying it's very possible, not a guarantee, and I make no promises, but I'll certainly think about it.
Yeah,
if that counts for me.
Sure.
But universal health care is coming to the United States. I guarantee it. It is going to happen. Will it happen before I die? I don't know. But then again, I'm 105, so I don't know how much longer I'm going to go anyway. Those charitable organizations corrupt. They do not care about the American people and whether or not they have health care.
No.
They are just trying to buy time, and their time is running out. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, Bernie.
And I do believe that their time is running out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's happening. It's just a matter of how many people are going to need to die between now and then by not getting what we need people to have. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I won't discuss. I stopped debating this like over a year ago. Like, I'm not debating Medicare for all. I'm not. I have no need to. It's happening. So it's not where No, it's like debating creationist or a flat earther. It's very.
The only thing that matters
counterproductive.
is whether or not the Bernie voice worked for you.
It is. I know, Christina. It is kind of a scary Bernie mask. It is kind of, but you know what? It's better than. Well, I mean, he has a couple of them, but they were all gifts. So we got to
get the Joe Biden one, and I got to start working on that. That's what I got.
The problem is that
Joe. The flat. Come on, man.
But that's the only thing you can say. Joe Biden thing is just not.
But what else do I have to say?
So overall, today, good news. We do have progress being made within our state party.
Yes.
We have progress being made by the Florida Panthers making a comeback. So I feel
really amazing connection with a local representative.
Yes.
Super awesome.
That was
Mike
very
Gellen.
cool. So we had it's been a good day.
It's been a good day. And we don't really feel the need to go much longer. I think we really hit on all our points.
So what else do we have going on this week? But I should at least see like calendar wise what's going on this week.
Calendar week. This is the last mobile school pantry for a while. And it's on Thursday, not Friday. So for anyone who is available to join us, we are going to have a very packed day on Thursday. It's going to be really,
I don't know how
busy.
much of that I am personally participating in. We'll have to discuss.
We'll figure it out.
Okay. But so what I wanted to say is Wednesday evening, 7:00, our first ever members only, Patreon members only Zoom meeting and presentation. Everybody who's a Patreon member, John, I'm assuming we have everybody's emails who's Patreon members so that we can do like a Zoom. But John, if there's a way to like consolidate a list of email, I wonder if people think that when I'm saying that, I'm just talking like the ether. I kind of am. What do you have for us today,
here's your opportunity
John?
to become a Patreon member of Generational Change.
If you become
it's
a $5
really awesome.
or $10 Patreon member between now and Wednesday, you will get the link to join our Zoom
But you
call.
got to act now because 48
And
hours
if
from
you
now, it's all
don't, but
gonna be
you'll
over.
get the next month if you can't do it this month.
The clock is ticking.
But we're going to do it.
Involved.
I'm probably going to stick with the schedule and do them at the end of the month. I don't know that Wednesday is necessarily a definitive day, but it could be. I don't know. We'll see. But this is what worked out for this month, and so we're going to be
the idea of potentially doing it before we go on the air, maybe at like 7:00 on like a Thursday or something.
You like
that.
the idea of doing it on a Thursday prior?
Maybe. Why not? We'll see. We'll see what the group thinks.
All right. Well, it's a
open any
different
ideas.
whatever. I mean, and it also depends on who I'm getting to do a presentation and what their schedule is, because I do like the idea of offering members something that's a special presentation, not just, hey, let's hang out and have a meeting.
No, I agree.
So Wednesday night, 7:00, we will be having a presentation by the amazing Mona Lisa Weber on food insecurity. She has presentation slides and everything. It's a very fancy presentation.
Christina, for anybody else who's here who is curious about community gardening, this is definitely one.
This is about more food insecurity than about her personal stuff
but
with
I'm
like
saying
gardening.
That the whole idea behind community gardens is this idea that it can it's self-sustainability.
And the truth is she's going to talk about the link between food insecurity and the school to prison pipeline. Because there is a huge look. Here's the bottom line, and this is what Z talks about all the time at Mobile School Pantry. Okay, children cannot perform when they're hungry.
No,
nobody can really perform when they're hungry. So what Z always says is full bellies fuel minds, and that's true. And when we're talking about food insecurity, there is not a coincidence that there is food insecurity in the same places that also have the school to prison pipeline. Correct. That are food deserts. So there is a link. And it's one of the links that we can actually do something about. That's the thing that's amazing about it with food, especially with community gardens and education. So that's what we're doing. So Wednesday night, if you're a $5 or $10 member, yay, you get to come on our call. You can ask questions, and we'll chat a little before or after the presentation, depending how people come on, and you'll get to say hey.
Say hey.
Say hey.
Say hey. We
really
appreciate every one of you who came on tonight. This has been a great show. It's been a very tight show. It wasn't overly long. It flowed very well. I like
if
the idea
you do
of
so say yourself.
I do so say myself.
But okay, well, it depends on what we have, other things we have to talk about.
That's very true.
Whatever. So who do we have on Thursday?
We do have on Thursday a very, very special guest. I know we normally really like to tout the individuals who are coming on, and we are very grateful for everybody who does. But Thursday night, we We have a very special guest. It's going to be Steve Donziger. He is the gentleman, he's the attorney who successfully sued Chevron for a lot of money. And they have come back at him like hell hath no fury. And he is currently under house arrest under a very, this is going to be interesting having the lawyers have a conversation.
Well, and so what we're really going to be talking about, though, I suppose, is then climate justice. Or we're talking about somebody who's suing Chevron. So we're talking about climate justice, which is obviously a huge thing.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that'll be really cool. So we'll be having a talk with somebody who is a fighter for climate justice.
That's one way of putting it, because he is definitely that and then some. He is definitely somebody who is a real threat, which is why they're coming after him as hard as they did. Hats off to two awesome ladies, obviously our recent guest and friend Marianne Williamson, and somebody we are hoping to have come on the show very, very soon, which of course is Susan Sarandon, who, what can you say? I mean, for somebody who is the opposite of Deborah Messing.
I do know. Okay, so Susan Sarandon follows me on Twitter. And so I know that she is aware of us.
Yes.
And yeah, I'd love to have her on the show. That would be interesting. I told you I met her. She would never remember meeting me. I was just a person 2 rows back at a hockey game. But she was very, very lovely and pleasant. And by the way, she was extremely beautiful. And this is somebody who was sitting in front of me, 2 rows in front of me, no makeup on, by the way. This was at a hockey game. Hair in a pony and wearing her Rangers jersey in Vancouver. All right, come on.
Come say goodnight to everybody.
Good night from Lulu.
The little princess.
Good night from
Who's a sweet
Lulu.
little munchkin.
So yeah, it would be very cool to talk to Susan Sarandon again. And I'm a huge fan. Huge fan.
That would be awesome. Obviously, I think she'll eventually come on. I do think that'll happen. And again, somebody. The reason why I particularly admire her is because not only is she somebody who doesn't need this under any circumstances, she is an extremely well-off individual, but she absolutely believes in the cause, and she has 0 F's to give.
Oh yeah,
she
love
really
that
does.
about her too.
And somebody who. Really, she really put herself out there, especially for Bernie. And I can't thank her enough for all the things that she has done and obviously has done for Stephen because he really needs it. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation on Thursday. We look forward to having you guys then. Keep spreading the word, sharing it everywhere.
Peace out.
Good night, everybody.